Dr. O'Farrell. How's that sound?
It sounds awesome. It's a new title that I'm still getting used to.
All right. Well, thank you ever so much for joining me on the International Classroom podcast today in this, what can only be described as a wonderful facility. For our listeners and for our viewers out there, where are we in the world today?
We are at Zayed Higher Organisation for People of Determination in Al Bahia in Abu Dhabi. And we are sitting in a model inclusive classroom, which is part of a larger project that ZHO are doing to showcase inclusive settings for people with different needs, or people of determinations, as we call them here in the UAE. So we are in the larger showroom where we have a model inclusive office space, model inclusive hotel, lots of different inclusive tools and tech. And where we are sitting is the model inclusive classroom that we, Inclusion, have designed and delivered in the last couple of months.
Amazing. So let's just focus on you for a little bit in terms of your journey. What led you to this point in your career?
So I started out as a teacher. I was teaching in Ireland for a couple of years when I was really blown away by the variety of different needs that we see in the kids who we were working with. And back then, there wasn't really a terribly good understanding of what different needs were. So I pivoted and I did a degree in psychology. I shifted to inclusive education, came to the UAE, and I moved from being an inclusion teacher, Senko, principal, corporate leader, and then I opened my own company to help schools and families to access education for kids who were finding it difficult to gain access to mainstream education.
And how long have you been at the Zayed Higher Organisation?
So this partnership only started this year, but we've been working remotely with ZHO for maybe 3 or 4 years, and we've been in the UAE. I've been in the UAE 12 years, and Inclusion as an organisation has been established. We're in our 4th year now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So give us then a brief overview of the types of things that you would do here and the types of, not necessarily children, but people of determination that you work with here.
So we work with pretty much anyone who has special needs. We work with families, schools, organisations. We provide shadow teachers or learning support assistants for children who want to gain access to mainstream education but can't do so independently. So they're specialised practitioners who will accompany them to schools and help them to be in mainstream rather than separated out into either a special needs centre or a special school. We also work with schools to help them design inclusive practices, and we work with larger organisations to do workshops with their staff around inclusion, diversity, and understanding different needs, whether it's from a customer's perspective, a family, employee, or a child's perspective.
And just give us then an overview of the types of things that you're doing to ensure that obviously students that come here have this engagement and accessibility in the classroom.
The biggest area where we hope we are having an impact is through our shadow teachers, our learning support assistants. We're working with over 150 children this year, and children who may not have been able to access mainstream education apart from the support that our wonderful practitioners are providing. So they will accompany a child to school, and the main goal for any of our practitioners is to promote independence. But where the child does need support, whether it's academic support, physical support, or support in terms of removing barriers to learning, such as barriers like dyslexia or sensory needs, then our practitioners will help with that.
And in terms of that being obviously one of the most, like, say, impactful strategies, what are some of the other strategies that you utilise and incorporate into this inclusion teaching?
It's parental engagement is probably one of the most powerful tools. So we work really closely with the parents and the school. So once we start working with a child, we create a kind of a triad with the parents, the school, and us and the practitioner. And the communication to ensure that everyone is talking the same language is probably where the biggest impact is, because a parent will come to us and give us a picture of a child, which is the child that they know and they love. a school will then describe that child perhaps very differently. And because myself and my partner Harmeet have both been Senkos in schools, we understand where that dichotomy can arise. And sometimes a child is very different in school to how they are at home. So sometimes it is realistic, but most of the time those views clash. So it's getting both sides of that triangle to come together and have a mutual understanding about what is the child's best path forward and trying to create that path forward together.
Now, I can imagine that we're sat here in the UAE, and only speaking for myself, English is my only language. Mm-hmm. How do you find then cultural differences or even cultural diversity? What's the impact? What's the challenges that you face maybe from a language perspective and a cultural perspective when you're trying to build this triad as you talked about?
Culturally, there are a lot of barriers. And we hear this all the time, that parents are very slow to admit or identify children who have different needs. That's not just because parents don't want to admit. There are a lot of constraints around that admission in the Middle East. And it's really important that we have compassion for parents when we think about that, because it's not that they don't want to, it's that the systems that we are in sometimes make it very difficult to embrace different needs. One of the biggest barriers also is cost, because almost as soon as you identify an individual need for children, you're looking at educational reports, therapeutic support, perhaps an LSA, and it's all really expensive. So there are really big barriers for parents working in this region.
Now, thinking about how we overcome these challenges, obviously we're here today and part of obviously our looking at our platforms, but predominantly to talk about the role that smart technologies plays in this as well. So obviously over the time that you've been here, we've got 12 years now, I've been here 10, like technology has had a huge shift. How have you found then the impact of technology and even talking about smart technologies, how has that contributed and had this impact on your inclusion teaching?
So tech can absolutely transform a child's ability to access education, whether it is assistive technology for hearing or vision, or assistive technology for a teacher to deliver their lessons. And when you look at something like the smart board, we can see there's so many tools on one piece of technology that can remove barriers for children who have dyslexia, sensory needs, autism, focus and concentration, any kind of barriers. There are tools in there that make it so much easier for them to be in a mainstream classroom and make it so much easier for a teacher to deliver a lesson.
Catherine, we are joined with you at the board ready for our live demonstration. We're in your capable hands. Take us through this.
So we'll take a walk through. This is a Smart Board RX, and it's designed specifically for accessibility to improve access to education for people with multiple different needs. It is so easy to use, and I'll just walk you through some of the settings that we've got. So if we come through settings, search accessibility, we can find all the different tools that we've got. So one of the tools that we have is called Live Transcribe, where as you're teaching, as you're delivering, you can transcribe. And this will give live captions, so you're not only doubling down on what the teacher is saying, you're reinforcing with the typed word. If you've got students who are finding it difficult to follow, if you've got hearing impairment, if you've got students who are maybe low verbal, it'll double down on that. And also, because the most of our students in the UAE are English as a second language or an additional language, it will help with language acquisition. You can also put it in different languages. So if you want to do it in Arabic or have your captions in Arabic, then you can do so. There is select to speak and talkback. Talkback is awesome. This is where any text on the screen can be digitized and it will speak it to you. So if you've got kids working independently with the screen while the teacher is teaching, or if you're off working with a group and you have a child who's maybe finding it difficult to access the written word, it will speak it for them. Equally, if you've got vision impairment, dyslexia, any of these, it will help with this. Speaking of dyslexia, you've got the display size and text. So you can change the font size, you can change the coloring, you can make magnification so that the kids can zoom in on the writing over. The color and motion is awesome because you can put on different themes. So if you've got a child with dyslexia, often by applying colored overlays to what they're reading, it can change the way that their vision interprets the reading. Because with dyslexia, sometimes text can jump around, it can be inverted, or inverted,
flipped upside,
reversed, inverted, whichever. So the colored overlay can often reduce that impact. So these are all hugely impactful for dyslexia. And dyslexia is probably, in the UK and Ireland, we're identifying about 15% of our population with dyslexia. And that's on top of the general identification for special educational needs. So statistically, you are very likely to have a number of children with dyslexia in your class. And it's really hard to identify because kids don't realize that what they see is not what other kids see. So I often retell the story of when you're doing your CVC words in early years and you were showing your kids CAT, but what the child with dyslexia sees is not CAT. So you're showing them every day for 6 weeks and they're still not getting it. It's possibly because they have dyslexia. We also have some tools around like timing controls. So those kids who can't, task completion is an issue. These are brilliant because they'll put on an alarm, it'll show them, it'll give them a countdown so they can see, okay, I've got maybe 5 minutes, I've got 3 minutes, I've got 2 minutes, I've got to finish my activity. So there's a lot of tools that you can use, and you can see how easy it is. So if we come down and look at our whiteboard, so you can use either with your hands, just touch and type, or you can take our interactive pen, and using this one, you can choose whatever color. We can do something like, how are you feeling today? And please excuse my writing. I haven't taught for a while. How are you feeling today? And my letter formation, my gosh, as in early years I'd be killed. How are you feeling today? We can ask and we can change, flip the color. Maybe we want to do a happy face, or we want to do I'm not so happy. But if you've got kids who are pre-verbal or who are finding it difficult to express their emotions, there are all these different emotional stamps that they can use. So maybe I'm feeling pretty happy today, or maybe I'm not so happy, or maybe I'm really not happy at all. So the kids can choose what they want to do or how they want to express themselves. And you can use those stampers for so many different tasks. Like if, for example, we were teaching a lesson on fractions, and there are so many templates that you can use, pre-prepared templates for teaching loads of different sessions. So if we're teaching fractions and we have maybe, oops, I need to swap this over, put on my hand, I can rub that out and shift this up. It's so easy to use. And then you can take your stamper and say, yes, you got that right, and showcase what the children have done correctly.
Amazing. I can't help but notice
the pointy fingers.
These pointy fingers, by the way, if you can see these.
Aren't they awesome?
What can we use these for? Because how I would choose to use this is probably very different for what it's meant to be used for.
Possibly not allowed. What these can be used for pretty much in the same way that you would use a finger. So if you've got students who may have difficulty with sensory needs or finger manual dexterity, they can use the pen. So we go back to our finger and they can type, so hello, and they can choose their colors. So we could go with purple, and they can put any of these here as well, and the kids can use those. So if you've got pre-writing for early years, where you've got children who may be developing their fine motor skills, then you can, let's just choose something. You could do maybe number formation, where they would do just really large numbers, something big where they don't have that dexterity yet to do smaller writing.
And does it, I'm just going to try this out, does it work if I...
Yeah.
So can we both?
You can do two each, and you can have one person writing while another person, if you write your next number, we can erase while you're writing, which is a unique feature of this board.
What model of board is this, by the way?
RX, the Smartboard RX.
Fantastic.
So it's got all those additional features specifically for accessibility. It is really awesome.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you ever so much. Obviously, fantastic demo. Thank you ever so much for taking us through that. Obviously, one of the things that you've mentioned being a real impact is about shadow teachers. And what is then the professional development in terms of supporting educators to learn how to use these skills? How have you found it?
At the moment, it's quite poor, to be honest. We are working tirelessly to help teachers engage and utilize the resource that they have in a shadow teacher, because often they don't understand the profoundly positive impact that a shadow teacher can have. And if you're a teacher and you can train your shadow teacher how to use these kind of boards and this kind of tech, they can absolutely support not just the child who they're assigned to, but all children in the class. And of course, depending on parental permission, because the parents are paying for this practitioner. But generally, if you can engage a shadow teacher to use this kind of tech, they can be a teacher for your whole lesson. And the ultimate goal should be to promote independence for your child, so they shouldn't be stuck to the one child all day. Ideally, they should be working with other groups so that the teacher can work with that child as well.
And obviously, we've just seen some examples of it there. But how would you advocate for teachers, therefore, to differentiate or adapt their instructional practices to ensure that not just our students of determination, but then all students can access the lesson?
Well, all students, for sure. Like something like the captions that we saw, where you can literally have text-to-speech or speech-to-text, where you're delivering a lesson for predominantly students where English is their second language. They have that secondary support of being able to read, and you can modify that to have it in different languages as well. So if you know that 90% of your class are Arabic native language speakers and their English is average, and you really want to deliver a lesson with impact, you could have Arabic subtitles up there, Arabic captions.
Amazing. And we talk about impact. What impact have you seen on student engagement and learning outcomes through using smart technologies?
It's huge, and the research is really robust around it. I often hear parents saying, oh, we need to reduce screen time and gaming is not so good, and you're the expert in this. But the research around gaming shows explicitly that it improves social skills, it improves communication, response times, spatial reasoning. There are huge benefits to those kind of activities. So I think it can really improve access to learning.
Amazing. Are you able to give us an example of something that you've seen where that impact has been measurable?
Particularly around children who are pre-verbal, autistic kids. If they find it difficult to engage with their peers, when you've got a screen or an interactive game like some of the games that are available here, they can communicate without language, and that makes a huge difference. Language doesn't have to be our only means of communication. Something as simple as the stampers, how are you feeling? If a child is pre-verbal and they can't express that, but they've got the stamper, then they're communicating.
So obviously with the stampers that you've shown us, is that something that is just purely for our students of determination, or is it something you might advocate that all students have?
Everyone. They can all use this. And particularly younger kids who may not be able to write or may not be able to verbalise their emotions very well yet. It's for everyone. And there's stamps for everything. So you may have kids who are a little bit sad today, kids who are very happy. So it's a really good tool.
Yeah, in terms of just bringing about, obviously, engagement, activity, and I think that idea of trying to move away from a traditional classroom setup in terms of just rows, we all know, we've seen it, haven't we? Every classroom we look at, even AI, we ask it to generate an image, it's just rows behind desks. So anything that we can do to change that, to remodel that, I think is a really positive idea. So obviously those are just some of the strategies, and obviously we've seen that. Is there anything else that you would recommend for teachers who are just maybe starting this journey, who want to get into incorporating more of this technology to make their classroom more inclusive? What other features would you be recommending to them?
Okay, so starting off with looking at statistics around inclusion and special educational needs. Approximately 15% of the population are going to have SEN. Statistically, we're identifying as low as 1% in some of the Emirates here, 4 or 5% in Abu Dhabi, 6 to 8% in Dubai. We're really under identifying. So what I would advise teachers is look up what are the most common areas of need. We've got autism, ADHD, dyslexia and Down syndrome, and see what are the symptoms of those, and how can I see those in the kids in my class? Are they there? Maybe they've not been identified. Then look up what are the simple tools that I can use to remove barriers, whether the child has a formal identification or not. What are the simple tools? Like some really simple tools around dyslexia, which is really commonly under-identified, are like expanding the size of text or putting coloured overlays, all of which you can do on the screen, or you can do on simple, like the basic old school paper copies. Just simple things. It doesn't have to be complicated, but research, read, look it up, see what your kids are more likely to have and how you can accommodate it. It's not difficult, and it can make a profound difference on a child's access to learning.
Amazing. So thinking then about the future of inclusion and inclusion in education, like how do you see that changing in the years to come?
I think we will become much more accommodating of alternative pathways through education. We can see that changing here in the UAE already. And in Abu Dhabi, we've just sanctioned a further alternative pathway. It's something that we really need a lot of work on in the UAE. Like if you look at Ireland or the UK, there are multiple pathways through education. It's not just the old school, I need to get a leaving cert or a GCSE or like a school leaving certificate. There are pathways where you can do vocational training or you can do apprenticeships. And that's slowly becoming more accessible here. It hadn't been for years. We've been fighting for it for years. But I think if you look even 5 years into the future here in the UAE, we will have a lot more alternative routes to success and to third level.
Yeah, I mean, from my side, thinking about, we talk about traditional routes like IB and we have A levels here. I think we're starting to see a lot more recognition for BTECs.
Yeah.
We've got obviously the careers program with IB. And so those alternative pathways, I was speaking with someone in Germany and they have a dual vocational pathway. So from the ages of about 15, 16, students can go off and study vocational courses like engineering, electrical, plumbing, those types of things. And it works very, very well for their system. And it will be interesting if in the future we could take vocational ideas, you know, because there's enough educational institutes, there's enough educators here that want to and could do and push more for just obviously different means, different ways of qualifying and some of the things that you're doing here. And you mentioned this as we were walking through. It kind of alludes to that. Like, what are the types of things you're getting students to do here in terms of developing vocational skills?
So if we take ZHO as an example, ZHO are working with people of determination who may not be able to access mainstream education, and they're skilling them practically. Like here in Al Bahia at this facility, we have it's called Made by People of Determination. So there's a chocolate making factory, cheese making, there's a huge textile, 3D printing, and they're all done by people of determination. And it's giving employment, it's giving skills, and it's a really, really wonderful model. But this facility is for people who are on the higher level of need. We need something more for people who are on the mid-level of need who may not be able to graduate in a typical classroom.
And just from obviously your perspective, what would you like that to look like?
I would like that to look 100% as in mainstream, embedded in mainstream schools as an option, just like you would have in Ireland or the UK, that you can choose an alternative pathway but still be in mainstream. So there's not that separation. Because once kids go into the workforce, there's no separate workforce for PODs. It's our workforce. So we need to have complete integration from as early as possible.
So help me out here. Obviously, I'm teaching and I'm kind of coming to this idea now. And again, just from things I read, that a lot of teachers, we're all clones. Like if you think about, if you ask them, how do you start a lesson?
Yes,
they all
right.
go,
Yeah.
we'll go with retrieval practice. And one of the books I've been reading about at the moment is about rebel ideas.
Okay.
And it's kind of got me on this Star Wars theme about Attack of the Clones and the rebels and how we label everything. But teachers are that. I want to be a bit rebellious. I want to change how I do things. In other words, and by the way, this book is called Rebel Ideas by Matthew Syed. It's all about diversity.
Okay.
And talks a little bit about cognitive diversity, neurodiversity, and different things. But I see the significance of this, and this is why I bring it up now, because I realize that in order to improve and develop my teaching, I can't just go and ask other teachers. I need to think slightly outside the box, and people who have different frames of references. So I'm coming to you. I want to make my classroom more inclusive. I want to, be able to look at these things and approach it in different ways, and not just the same ways that others do. What would be your strategies for me? How do I make that mid-level model that you want? How do I bring about that in my classroom? What would you be recommending for me?
One of the most amazing experiences that is available now in the UAE, it hadn't been up until this year, is actually right here. It's behind you, and we can show you just after. But it's called the Immersive Reality Experience for Autism, and it is powered by Topland, which are an organisation that do accessibility for all kinds of different things, whether it's accessible tools, equipment, tech, and they showcase the lived experience of having moderate to profound autism. So it's a full course. You go in for 7 minutes. You have specialised glasses, specialised gloves, and you have to experience what life is like in the mind of somebody who is really hypersensitive. And it is so overwhelming. It's unbelievable how overwhelming it is. And what I'm hoping, and what I know Topland are hoping, is that we can get as many teachers through this experience so that they can go back to their classrooms and think, this is what life is like in my classroom for people who have these needs. And autism is the highest, the most common need in the UAE at the moment, most commonly identified, I should say. So they're probably... in every classroom, there's probably somebody who is somewhere on the autistic spectrum who may be experiencing life in a way that is not typical, or not the way that the majority of teachers would experience it.
Yeah, I think that would be amazing, because we often say, well, you don't know what you don't know. But what we're talking about here is about blind spots. So from my frame of reference, I would never experience that. It is a blind spot of mine. I don't know what it feels like. So to be able to provide an opportunity for teachers to experience that and then go, oh, wow, I never knew what that felt like. It gives them, one, making them aware of what their blind spot is, but also then how you can remove that bias and give them a different frame of a reference to them to go, right, now I know this. Now I've experienced this, and that's the difference. I know I should be doing these things, but now I've experienced it. It gives me that perspective to then go, right, I need to change these things, and that's because.
Yes.
And I think that would be a really, really cool thing to do, and a really good thing to do for educators, is to come and try it. We've seen it before, haven't we, where we're like, make dads carry pregnancy things so they know what to go through the electroshocks, you know what childbirth feels like. It's like, it's experience.
It is. And when they come, they can come to the model classroom, see our smart boards, see our OT space, which is awesome as well, and they can visit the whole facility. Be brilliant.
Amazing. So that's kind of led us into this one as we start to wrap it up. But obviously you here have designed a lot of these things, so it'll be interesting how you answer this one. But if you could design an ideal inclusive classroom, no constraints, what tools and features would you have in it, and why?
So this is pretty much the start of our classroom. We're building it up incrementally. The first couple of tools that we knew had to be here were the interactive boards and also the occupational space. So this space was designed by Moon Kids, and we have therapeutic devices that can help kids who have sensory needs, can help with attention and focus, and it's a really nice space to be in. So it can be typical or neuroatypical kids. Anyone can go in there. Teacher can go in there and have a little snooze if they want to. But these kind of OT spaces, I know maybe it's not accessible for a mainstream class, but you could have it in a school for sure. I would also have as much interactive tech as you can. Things like widget, text help, key to enable. These are all interactive tools that are assistive in communication, in removing barriers to learning caused by dyslexia. I would have the old school practical things like therapy for finger development, like these chairs that we have, the specialised chairs for vestibular stimulation, wobble cushions. It doesn't have to be expensive and it doesn't have to be hard to use. Like these chairs, you can pick them up on Amazon, they're a couple of hundred dirhams. A wobble cushion is 50 dirhams in Carrefour, and they can change a kid's ability to stay focused and active in their learning.
I would be asleep in the ball pit, by the way.
Yeah, the ball pool is awesome. This is Moon Kids. You've got to check them out. They've got the most amazing tools to support learning.
I will do. And lastly, if you could leave our listeners and viewers with one key takeaway about the power of inclusion in education, what would it be?
Fewer than 10% of children who have special needs gain access to long-term employment when they graduate. And that's a really sad number. That it's a number that a teacher who really supports their children well can change. And they can change it very easily with support. And that's something that I try to relate to teachers all the time, that small changes in your classroom make big changes in a child's life.
Amazing. A fantastic point to leave us with. And if anyone listening, watching wants to find out more about yourself and the work that you do here, where is the best place to find you?
www.inclusion.com.
Amazing.
INCLUZUN.
Wonderful. And we'll tie that down. But for now, Dr. Catherine O'Farrell, thank you so much for joining us on the International Classroom podcast and talking about all things inclusivity today. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Okay, so this is the autism reality experience, which is one of the most impactful experiences that you can have around inclusion and understanding of special needs. So it's the only experience available outside of the UK. And how it works, you come, you enter inside, you get 8 minutes in a room where you've got specialised gloves, specialised glasses, and you're overwhelmed by all of these sensory inputs to give you an idea about what life is like for a child who is hypersensitive. You have 8 minutes in the room, which, believe me, is enough because it really affects you. It is so overwhelming. Like the day I did it, Andy from Topland, who facilitates it, he told me that my legs were shaking and I was literally responding so passionately for it. Then you come outside, you have a 2-hour total debriefing where we speak to the practitioners about what autism is, the effects it has on the body, how it affects children in classrooms. So as a teacher, you come, you can experience what life is like if you've got these needs in your classroom. And you bring that back, and then you can modify your learning environment to support those needs. And it really, the empathy that you see from people who've undergone the process, it's huge. Like we've had mums and dads who've gone through it and they come out and almost always they're crying because they really understand what life is like from their child's perspective. So if you can, it's ready, open to go, come through Topland, the website for Topland, and you can come and see.